Ahead, I'll talk with Lisa Gardner about Kiss Her Goodbye. It's the fourth thriller novel to feature the character Frankie Elkin. This time, Frankie is called to Tucson to find a missing person and uncovers a much larger danger. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and this is Some Books Considered. Lisa Gardner is a #1 New York Times bestselling novelist with over 30 million copies of her books in print worldwide. Previous books in the Frankie Elkin series include Before She Disappeared, One Step Too Far, and Still See You Everywhere. She joins us to talk about Kiss Her Goodbye. Lisa, welcome to Some Books Considered.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here again. I love our yearly chats.
Well, this is the fourth installment to feature this character who seems a bit out of place for someone who's looking for a missing person. So tell me about Frankie Elkin, for those who may not be familiar with this character.
Frankie Elkin is one of my favorite characters right now. Started with an idea based on some things going on in the real world where everyday people now are getting involved in working cold cases. So Frankie, as is typical, doesn't have a law enforcement background, does not have special training. Frankie has an obsession, though. She is a recovering alcoholic. She doesn't do well staying in one place, having one job, having a stable relationship. She's at her best roaming from town to town. So working these missing persons cold cases gives Frankie a mission. This is what I'm doing. This is why I'm going out and doing these things. But Frankie is also very vulnerable. When bad things happen, does not have superpowers. She's not going to win in a bar fight. She's not some master hacker. She's just us. She goes from place to place. She asks a lot of questions and she listens and she has empathy for the answers.
In the foreword to the novel, you have a dedication to those who worked in Afghanistan to deal with all the trauma that was going on there. Was that part of the overall inspiration for this book?
Yes, Kiss Her Goodbye was inspired by a couple I met, actually, when I was out traveling. They volunteered to help resettle refugees in Tucson and had been working with an Afghan family. So talking to them about what all those challenges are. I mean, a refugee is legally recognized. The U.S. is bringing them here with permission. But the way it works, you have 90 days to get set up and become self-sufficient. And when you talk about particularly a major urban environment like Tucson, where you do not have affordable housing, it is very difficult to get a job. That 90 days ticks by very fast. And yet all of these refugees I spoke to, this is winning the lottery to get permission to come here. They are determined and very hopeful about making a better future for themselves and their children.
So this is the background from the novel. Tell us about the plot. What's the story the readers are going to find here?
So Frankie comes from Tucson because she's been notified by a friend that her friend has gone missing. Young mother, only been in the country for 10 weeks and has disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The young woman's husband doesn't seem interested at all. The police have not taken up the case, but Alia is adamant there is no way Sabra would leave her 4-year-old daughter, particularly not after everything it took to get to this country. So this is the perfect case for Frankie. She is determined to reunite this little girl and her mom.
So this draws on many things in your novel. Of course, the history of what happened in Afghanistan, and you paint some portraits here about what it means to be a refugee and that trauma, and also refugee camps, etc. Tell us a bit more about that.
I talk about this as some of the hardest research I've done, and I actually encourage people of all the books I've written, read the acknowledgments on this one. I'm so used to doing research that's procedural, forensics, how to analyze blood spatter, whatever. But this book was really being more like Frankie myself. I was just talking to people about their experiences, the very human experience. What's it like to watch your entire country disappear in 8 hours? Because that was the fall of Kabul. What's it like to then get caught in these refugee camps for years, waiting to hear what's the next step? Because it's a long and arduous procedure. And then talking to these people about finally getting, again, like this is the great opportunity to come to the United States. But you have to learn a whole new culture. You have to get a job where there's limitations on what you're even allowed to do. The family in this book, and it was based on some of the people I talked with, the father's a brilliant mathematician in Afghanistan. She has a gift with languages, and yet their education's not recognized here. And that's a pretty typical experience. When people say all refugees do is do Uber Eats and Uber driving, it's like, that's somewhat some of the only jobs we allow them to do. There are a lot of doctors and lawyers and medical personnel and engineers driving taxis. And that's why. So these challenges are real. And interviewing with these people were so heartbreaking in many cases, but also so inspiring. The United States remains a beacon of hope for so many people out there.
And as you tell this story, you weave in some Afghan culture, including some of the cuisine.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that.
I had never gotten to eat Afghan food, and I honestly thought of it as being more exotic or spicier, maybe closer to Indian food. But in fact, it is comfort food, like dumplings and these really lovely lamb dishes. They like complex flavors, but not spicy. And yes, I just, for the sake of research, I had to go out and eat a lot of Afghan meals. And I do highly recommend, and we're offering the recipe on the social media and the website for Fernie pudding, which once you've had that, you will never go back.
Another thing perhaps you had to do some research on was introducing some iguanas into the story.
I like to give Frankie a challenge for each book. I mean, again, Frankie's going to new cities, so Frankie has to figure out how to make some living, or at least get a roof over her head, because she's doing her missing persons operations for free. So this time Frankie gets a house sitting gig, except it turns out what she's house sitting is iguanas and snakes. And Frankie does not like iguanas and snakes. I will admit I am highly uncomfortable with iguanas and snakes. So I considered this a growth experience for both of us. And I got to have an iguana spend a day in my office. And let me just tell you, whatever the iguana wanted, the iguana got. Way bigger than me, wanted my reading chair. I'm like, you may have the reading chair. Told the dogs he wanted the dog bed. He got the dog bed. All hail the iguana.
Well, this starts out as a missing person story, but it soon turns into something much larger, much more involved with much bigger threats. Tell us what you can without spoilers about what else is going on here.
I think the heart to a great thriller, and particularly a domestic suspense thriller, is there has to be high stakes. So yes, you start this book knowing something mysterious and probably ominous has happened to this young mother. And then Frankie has an opportunity to talk to the 4-year-old daughter, who greets her with a riddle of all things. You must find a lock that has no key for a key that has no lock, which is not what Frankie is expecting from a 4-year-old at all. But then very quickly, now it appears that even the 4-year-old's life is at stake. And it becomes very much an action-packed page-turner, while still at its heart being those questions, what goes on behind closed doors? And when you're looking at, a great psychological thriller, it's not just the lies you tell other people. Sometimes the lies you tell yourself. And Frankie knows those lies may be the best of anyone.
This is meant to be an engaging read, of course. But beyond that, do you hope people will take away perhaps a better understanding of what refugees go through?
I've always loved books that allow you to walk in someone else's shoes. And not to tell you what to think or how to feel, but just, hey, here's this other experience. I thought I knew about refugees or had some idea of it, but to actually interview people, talking to Doctors Without Borders of what happens in the refugee camps, and the work that's done there, and how the refugees themselves are volunteering and are the heart of the refugee camps. I mean, these stories were just heartbreaking, but also inspirational. And I think it is hard not to read all of this and not be moved.
There's a question that I like to ask authors of fiction, and it's this. If you could spend a day in real life with one of the characters from your book, who would it be and why?
Oh, this would be fun, actually. I will admit I am partial to Frankie, just because I think Frankie is so everyday and so easy to talk to. I mean, she's a character you could picture like, yeah, we could go out on the town, or we could just go walk around. She sees kind of magic everywhere, but she will stop and talk to anyone and have good stories and good adventures along the way. And that kind of easygoing personality is, relaxing for an anal retentive like me.
Well, this is the fourth novel to feature Frankie. Will we see more Frankie adventures in the future?
I don't think Frankie's story is done yet, but I like to take things one book at a time. I don't even plan the book. So by the time we get to the ending and readers say they're surprised, I'm like, yeah, me too. So I never get too far ahead of myself.
So when you're writing a book, sounds like, you don't necessarily outline everything in advance, but it's more like I know where I'm going and I kind of figure it out along the way.
What I really try to do is have it be character driven. So I spend some time trying to get to know these people and what they might be about, even though I can't know all the answers. We don't always know all the answers about ourselves, right? But I feel if I do it correctly, right around page 50, it's almost like the characters find themselves and they take over. And then my job is to keep up. And that to me is what keeps the book so engaging, because it is a very real-time discovery for each of these characters of what's going on, what's at stake, and what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I've heard that from a variety of authors that say that maybe I thought the character was going to do this, but when I got to that point, no, she wouldn't do that at all. She would do this instead.
I always feel like we sound like we're slightly insane. And I love belonging to writing organizations. And I actually had a number of author friends who helped me even with this book, because you just have to spend other time with people who have voices in their heads. No one else really gets us, I think.
Well, speaking of kind of things that some people might think are crazy, you have an annual contest about, I think I'm looking down to make sure I get it right. Kill a friend, maim a buddy. Tell us about that.
Yes. I consider this my public service offering. If you go to the website, lisagardner.com, you can enter this contest and nominate the person of your choice to die in my next novel. There's always a winner, and it's always a great deal of fun.
You've written many other books besides this Frankie Elkin series, so what's next for you?
I'm actually going old school, back to my Gothic roots. That's how I started out 30 years ago. It's a mysterious young couple that buys a rundown lodge in the mountains of New Hampshire with an infamous past of an unsolved murder. And again, I don't actually know what's going to happen next, but I'm very excited to find out.
The novel is Kiss Her Goodbye by Lisa Gardner. Lisa, thank you for talking with me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Dan. It's great to speak with you again.
If you'd like to purchase Kiss Her Goodbye, I've placed a link for you in the description below. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you know when I post new interviews. Meanwhile, here are 2 more books you might find interesting. I'm Dan Skinner. Thank you for watching this edition of Some Books Considered.